Ancient religion promised protection from forces ordinary people could not control: disease, drought, earthquakes, invasion, fire. But bringing thousands of worshippers into a city created forces of its own. Bodies compressed inside narrow gates, flames multiplied beneath wooden roofs, smoke accumulated in enclosed sanctuaries, rhythmic movement loaded floors never designed to move beneath a crowd. The gods were supposed to prevent catastrophe. Sometimes the ritual created it. These are 6 strange religious practices that could transform devotion into an urban disaster, including 2 catastrophes preserved in ancient historical accounts: one city destroyed partly by its own sacred factions, one danger reconstructed through modern science, and 2 famous temple collapse traditions whose historical certainty remains disputed. The distinction matters. Ancient writers recorded miracles, rumors, political propaganda, and eyewitness testimony in the same language. A dramatic story could survive for 2,000 years, while the engineering report disappeared before sunset. But even when the divine explanation remains uncertain, the physical mechanism does not. A crowd still has weight, smoke still replaces clean air, wood still burns, and stone columns still carry everything above them. The first ritual was the Passover pilgrimage into Jerusalem. During the 1st century, Passover brought enormous numbers of Jewish pilgrims into the city. They came to worship at the temple, offer sacrifices, and remember the liberation of Israel from Egypt. The ritual required concentration: one sacred city, one sacred sanctuary, one limited network of gates, stairways, courtyards, and streets. Roman authorities understood the danger. Additional soldiers were positioned around the temple during major festivals, officially to preserve order. Their presence also placed armed occupation troops directly above a religious crowd, already conscious of Roman control. During the administration of the procurator Cumanus, sometime around 48 to 52 CE, one soldier insulted the worshippers gathered near the temple. The gesture itself did not kill anyone. The reaction did. The crowd shouted. Objects were reportedly thrown. Cumanus called additional troops into the temple complex, and thousands of pilgrims interpreted their arrival as the beginning of an attack. People turned toward the exits simultaneously. The passages could not absorb them. Those at the front slowed near gates and narrow streets. Those behind continued moving because they could not see the obstruction. Pressure passed backward through the crowd. Bodies were pinned against walls. People fell and disappeared beneath the feet of those who were still being pushed forward. Josephus claimed that 10,000 died in one version of the story and 20,000 in another. Later writers increased the number again. The exact total is unreliable. The physical sequence is not. Modern crowd researchers describe the same transition. At extreme density, individuals lose control over their own movement. Pressure waves pass through the mass. People do not need to panic or behave irrationally. They can be standing still and still be crushed. The pilgrimage did not become dangerous because worshippers suddenly forgot how to behave. It became dangerous because the ritual placed too many bodies inside too little architecture, then introduced fear at the worst possible point. They entered Jerusalem to remember and escape. The exits killed them. The second ritual was the Roman gladiatorial spectacle. By the 1st century CE, gladiatorial contests had become commercial entertainment, political theater, and public obsession. But their origins were connected to funerary ceremonies, offerings, and the belief that bloodshed could honor the dead. The sacred origin faded. The hunger for spectacle remained. In 27 CE, a freedman named Attilius constructed a temporary amphitheater at Fidenae, a town close enough to Rome to attract a massive audience. Emperor Tiberius had restricted public entertainments, so the announcement of a new gladiatorial show drew men, women, children, and visitors from the capital. Attilius wanted revenue. Strong foundations cost money. Tacitus wrote that the builder failed to secure the foundations properly and did not fasten the wooden superstructure with adequate beams. The amphitheater was filled, with additional spectators standing around its exterior. Then the structure moved. Part of it collapsed inward onto the audience. Other sections broke outward onto the people gathered outside. Seats, beams, bodies, and fragments of timber dropped together. The disaster began and ended in a moment. Ancient casualty estimates vary, with Tacitus describing tens of thousands killed or injured. His number may be exaggerated, but the scale was large enough for the Roman government to react. The Senate introduced construction requirements and restricted who could sponsor such spectacles. The ritualized arena had concentrated 3 loads in one place: the dead weight of the building, the live weight of the audience, and the shifting weight of thousands reacting at once. A wooden grandstand can appear stable while people enter gradually. The danger becomes visible only when the crowd stands, leans, stamps, or surges together. By then, inspection is over. The spectators came to watch trained men die for public pleasure. The building refused to follow the program. The third ritual was worship inside a city already at war with itself. Jerusalem in 70 CE was surrounded by Roman forces under Titus. Inside the walls, armed Jewish factions competed for control of the city and the temple. The sanctuary remained the religious center of Jerusalem. It also became a fortress. Eleazar controlled the inner temple. John of Gischala controlled another faction. Simon bar Giora commanded forces elsewhere in the city. Each group claimed to be defending Jerusalem, yet each treated its rivals as immediate enemies. Passover made the situation worse. Worshippers were still admitted into the sanctuary. According to Josephus, John's men concealed weapons beneath their clothing, entered among the civilians, and attacked Eleazar's faction inside the sacred complex. A religious opening became a military breach. Fighting spread around the temple. Sacred timber was used for siege equipment. Houses and storage buildings near the sanctuary were burned during factional attacks. The fires reached grain supplies. Josephus claimed that the destroyed food could have sustained Jerusalem for years. That estimate is probably rhetorical, but the strategic result was real. The city lost provisions while a Roman army was closing its supply routes. Hunger followed. Food prices rose beyond reach. Families searched houses for grain. Armed groups seized supplies. The population weakened before the final Roman assault penetrated the city. The temple was supposed to unite Jerusalem around a shared sacred center. Instead, control of that center became the reason rival defenders attacked one another. Roman siege engines remained outside the walls. Jerusalem prepared the famine from within. The fourth ritual was mass incense burning inside enclosed sanctuaries. Incense was not decoration in the ancient world. Its smoke carried offerings upward. It concealed unpleasant smells from animal sacrifice. It distinguished sacred space from ordinary streets. In Egypt, Greece, Rome, Judea, Arabia, India, and East Asia, aromatic smoke announced that a ritual had begun. The more important the ceremony, the more material could be burned. Resins, wood, oils, herbs, charcoal. Ancient chroniclers did not measure particulate matter, benzene, formaldehyde, or carbon monoxide. They described fragrance, clouds, darkness, dizziness, divine presence, and priests emerging from smoke. Modern measurements provide the missing chemistry. Heavy incense burning can release fine particles and volatile organic compounds. In a large open courtyard, the smoke disperses. In a packed room with limited ventilation, it accumulates around the faces of priests and worshippers. The first effects do not look like a catastrophe. Eyes water, throats tighten, breathing becomes shallow. Some people become dizzy, others faint. Inside a dense crowd, one collapse can create a hole into which surrounding bodies fall. People behind cannot see the person on the floor. They continue moving toward the altar because the ritual is still underway. Fire adds another risk. Incense required embers or open flame. Lamps burned nearby. Curtains, wooden screens, roof beams, offerings, garlands, and clothing supplied fuel. A brazier knocked over during a crowded ceremony could ignite material before anyone understood where the smoke had changed. There is no securely documented ancient urban catastrophe that can be blamed solely on toxic incense fumes. That claim goes beyond the evidence, but the exposure mechanism is measurable, and the combination of smoke, flame, enclosed architecture, and crowd density made temples vulnerable long before anyone possessed an air quality monitor. The smoke was interpreted as a path to heaven. It also remained trapped near the ceiling. The fifth ritual was ecstatic dancing on elevated floors. Ancient worship was often physical. Participants clapped, stamped, leaped, spun, shook instruments, and repeated movements until ordinary awareness gave way to exhaustion or trance. Cults associated with Dionysus, Cybele, and other deities used music and bodily intensity as part of religious experience. This has produced a popular claim. A frenzied ancient congregation supposedly danced in rhythm until its temple collapsed. The story is mechanically possible. It is not securely documented as a specific historical urban disaster. Repeated synchronized movement can increase the dynamic load on a floor. Each person might weigh only a fraction of what a stone column carries, but a large crowd landing together creates a stronger pulse than the same people moving randomly. Wooden galleries are particularly vulnerable. Konichis loosen, beams flex, columns shift slightly on their bases. The movement can remain invisible until the structure approaches failure. Rhythm matters because repeated loading at the wrong frequency can amplify vibration. The floor begins responding to the crowd. Then the crowd responds to the floor. People adjust their steps to the motion beneath them, sometimes synchronizing even more closely. What began as dancing becomes an accidental mechanical system. Ancient buildings were not automatically fragile. Greek and Roman engineers created enormous roofs, theaters, temples, and vaulted halls. But temporary platforms, added galleries, neglected beams, and overcrowded upper levels were different. Religious enthusiasm did not cancel their load limits. The dramatic temple collapse story should therefore be presented as a reconstructed hazard, not a confirmed incident. The physics is persuasive, the police report is missing. The sixth ritual survives as sacred literature rather than verified urban history. In the Book of Judges, the Philistine rulers gather inside a temple of Dagon to celebrate the capture of Samson. They offer a sacrifice and praise their God for delivering their enemy into their hands. Samson is brought into the building as entertainment. He has been blinded. His hair has begun growing again. He is positioned between the central pillars that support the structure. The temple is crowded. The text describes rulers inside and thousands of men and women occupying the roof. Samson prays for strength, pushes against the supporting columns, and brings the building down upon himself and the worshippers. The scene contains every element of a ritual disaster: a victory ceremony, an overcrowded temple, spectators placed above the main hall, a captive displayed as part of the celebration, and a structural system dependent on critical central supports. Archaeologists have found Philistine temples with wooden columns resting on stone bases, including arrangements that demonstrate how important central supports could be. This does not prove that Samson existed, or that the Gaza collapse occurred exactly as written. It shows that the architecture described was not physically absurd. The story may preserve a historical memory. It may be heroic literature shaped around a plausible building design. It may combine both. What matters is how the narrative understands the disaster. The Philistines believed the ceremony demonstrated Dagon's power. They assembled their political elite, religious authorities, and population in one structure to witness a defeated enemy. That concentration made the final reversal possible. Their celebration gathered every target beneath one roof. The ritual completed the weapon. Ancient cities were built around sacred calendars. Festivals determined when people traveled. Temples determined where they gathered. Sacrifices required fire. Incense produced smoke. Music synchronized movement. Pilgrimage pushed thousands through gates designed for ordinary days. None of these practices guaranteed disaster. Most ceremonies ended without catastrophe. But rituals concentrated activity in time and space. They encouraged people to arrive together, move together, wait together, burn material together, and focus attention on a sacred objective, even when physical conditions were deteriorating around them. That created hidden systems: crowd pressure, dynamic loading, fire transmissions, smoke exposure, blocked exits, structural overload. Ancient observers often explained the result through divine anger. A god had rejected the sacrifice. A sacred rule had been violated. An enemy deity had intervened. The physical explanation was less dramatic. Too many people entered. The air stopped moving. The beam was too weak. The doorway was too narrow. The flame reached the roof. The gods received the offerings. The city absorbed the force.